What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Nasty Nate channel. In the last video you saw us get this thing running for the first time since this has been swapped with an LBZ drivetrain. Already fixed all the fuel leak. I tried to make a video how to replace the injector return line last night, and my cameras, both my cameras died while I was trying to film that. So that did not work out. Anyway, I did replace the driver's side injector return line, and I also deleted the fuel filter housing. Now, the only reason I did this is because the fuel filter housing was spraying fuel out of this sensor, so I most likely needed a new sensor. But I do have a lift pump on this truck, which is the AirDog 165, way down here. And since I have those filters, which are better than the factory filters, I did remove the filter housing from the factory on the engine, which bolts to right here. And I just deleted that using a 1/2-inch diesel fuel line. So right now, this is kind of a temporary fix. There is a better fuel line that you can run for this. It's a metal U-shaped bend, and you make the connection with just like 1 inch on each side of the rubber hose instead of looping it like this, because they have a tendency to kink right here, which is why I put a hose clamp in here. So this is a very temporary fix, but I wanted to do it to get this thing running and make sure that there is no fuel leaking with this thing as of right now, because that means I pinpointed the problem and we can move on to the next issue. Now, the next issue is we have a check engine light. So I'm gonna run the codes for that with my auto cal here in just a second, but I believe it is because of the turbo vane position sensor. So that is something I've replaced on my single cab truck about 2 years back. So the single cab has a newer sensor, and if we have a turbo vane code with this truck, I'm gonna slap the single cab one on the Suburban. That way I'll know if it fixes it and I can order another one. But it does sound a little weird. There's no turbo noise, so I'm guessing either the vanes are stuck on this or it needs a sensor. Either way, we'll put a sensor on it, or if the vanes are stuck, we will do some turbo upgrades and swapping. So let's start this thing up and I'll show you that it runs, doesn't leak anything, and we'll run some engine codes. All right, here we go. You can hear the lift pump. She starts right up. It's probably getting low on fuel. Only put like 5 gallons in it, and it leaked probably a gallon. So it is just open downpipe right now, but you can hear it runs pretty smooth. No map hooked up. I don't know what this noise is. Kind of sounds like the alternator. It's like a really loud clicking noise. Check for any blow-by. Nothing that I can see. This is honestly a really smooth running engine. It sounds really good. I'm gonna plug in my auto cal and scan this thing and go from there. All right, guys, took pictures of all the codes I have with this thing, and I'm gonna run through them. I just did some research. So the P0045 code is boost related. So that's either the vane position sensor or the vane solenoid or a boost leak. So I will try to chase that down. I'm gonna start with the vane position sensor probably, just because it's easy. P0113 is for the mass airflow. And I forgot to put the intake on, which means the mass airflow sensor is unplugged. So that would explain that. P0700 is basically a catch-all transmission. So it's like a check transmission light instead of a check engine light, and it does throw the check engine light in the truck. So that's kind of where that comes from. It's just meaning there are more codes with the trans. Then here is a TCM P0873, which means high pressure, I believe, in the transmission. and then P0877, which is low pressure. And this thing leaked a ton of trans fluid, and I haven't put any in yet because when I put this back together and checked the trans fluid level on the dipstick, before I ran it, it was at the right level, even though it leaked a ton of fluid out, like at least half the fluid. But I bought enough fluid to refill the whole thing, so I wanted to run it and then check the fluid level again, and then go through that cycle a few times, probably after I drive it also. I'll check the trans fluid and just make sure. So hopefully the trans fluid should fix the TCM codes, and we'll see if the vane sensor fixes that code, and then we'll put the MAF on. So let's get to it. If we can make this thing run with no problems right now, I mean, that would be amazing. So let's see what happens. Okay guys, I slapped the intake on, just kind of a rough placement thing. I'll bolt it in and whatever when we finish this thing. But also got the turbo vane position sensor off of the single cab. Had to grab a chair to stand on because I didn't want to stand on the painted bumper. Anyway, I'm going to get in this thing, clear the codes, and then start it up and let it run and see what we're working with. I also filled the trans with 3 quarts of ATF, so hopefully that helps with the trans codes that we're getting. All right, now I'll start it and let it run. So now what I'll do is we'll wait a few minutes and see if the engine light comes back on. And if it does, then I'll scan the codes again. Hopefully this thing is cleared up. I do hear the turbo, kind of like Duramax jet engine sound better than I feel like I did the other day, but I don't know, we'll see. She is running pretty smooth, it seems. Guys, this thing's been running for like probably 5 minutes now. No engine codes, no engine light. Low coolant still comes on, but I just filled it up with like probably half a gallon of water. So maybe next time I turn it off and turn it back on, that'll go away. This thing is running smooth though. I mean, honestly, maybe we just fixed it with the vane sensor. Sounds pretty good. I might let it warm up and see what happens. So there's this weird like clicking sound that comes from a pulley. I think it's the alternator. I can't pinpoint it. It's like a random clicking sound that it's like a pretty hardcore click. Sounds like it's a pulley. Right now it's got the perfect amount of trans fluid, it's got the perfect amount of oil. It seems like it's running. This thing's clicking a little more. I think it is the alternator. So I might get a new one. Thermostats have not opened yet, so there's probably still air in the coolant system. It looks like it's smoking a little bit. It is open downpipe. It's kind of hard to breathe in this garage, honestly. But there was fluids all over the engine bay, so it could be burning a little bit off. I don't want to run out of fuel. I guess the fuel light's not on, but Still says check coolant level and service 4-wheel drive, which I'm gonna have to look into, but so far I think this thing is gonna drive. I'm so excited to drive this thing. All right guys, I really wanted to kind of drag this video a little further and get the drive shaft made and get it tuned for this video, but I felt like it was running a little long, so I wanted to get this update out there, posted to you guys. I'm so excited about this thing. I've got a few things that I want to finish up on this. I'm going to order a vane position sensor so Single Cab and the Yukon can have a good one. And the next update video is going to have drive shafts, and we're going to get this thing tuned and we're going to rip on it. Hopefully we can rip on it down the road and not break anything and not have any issues. And then we got to find some wheels for this thing. I've had a ton of people messaging me on this, a ton of people talking about it. So super stoked for you guys to be excited about this build just as much as I am. So this thing is going to be out of the garage very soon. Literally, I need to find a drive shaft because this one right here is bent. This is the stock Suburban drive shaft. The U-joints are too small. You can see we've got a broken yoke right here, and this thing is completely bent. So I got to source another drive shaft for this thing and then go get it shortened so it fits on this. But remember guys, we have no codes on the dash. The service 4x4 and low coolant we will fix very soon. I just put on Instagram, this whole swap was done in my garage. I had to convert a living room in my house to garage space just so the Suburban would fit in here. So make sure you guys stay tuned to Nasty Nate right here. This thing's gonna be driving in the next video.